Good afternoon, everyone. So this is the last part of motor cortex. In this class, we are going to see the extrapyramidal tracts. So in the morning, we have seen the pyramidal tract or corticospinal, and the remaining tracts other than the pyramidal or the extrapyramidal. So in this, we will be seeing rubrospinal, vestibulospinal, reticulospinal, tectospinal, olivospinal, and medial longitudinal fasciculus. So there are total 6 tracts other than the pyramidal tracts. Okay, so in the first time, by seeing the names, don't get confused. So all are ending with the spinal. Okay, because the tracts are starting from the above higher centers. The first pyramidal tract is also otherwise called corticospinal. So cortico is the starting point and spinal is the ending point. So same here in the extrapyramidal. Rubro means it is the fibers are starting from red nucleus. Okay, so that's why the name rubro. And the vestibulospinal, the fibers are starting from the vestibular nucleus. And reticulospinal, the reticular formation present in the pons and medulla. So from both the areas, the tracts or the fibers will start. So this is pontine reticulospinal and medullary reticulospinal. And tectospinal is the superior colliculus that is involved in the vision. Okay, so the tectum is the area in the midbrain, that superior colliculus. So from there that fibers will be starting, so that is called tectospinal tract. And olivospinal, so olivary nucleus is present in the brainstem. So from the fibers from there, that is also called olivospinal tract. And medial longitudinal fasciculus is a special tract which involves various nuclei of the brainstem, and this tract is mainly concerned with the eye movements. Okay, so coordination of eye movements. And first we will see the rubrospinal tract. So origin is red nucleus of midbrain. This red nucleus receives strong excitatory or facilitatory input from the motor cortex and cerebellum. And its course is from red nucleus crosses to the opposite side in the lower part of tegmentum and descends same as lateral corticospinal tract. Okay, so it crosses to opposite side in the lower part of tegmentum, that is also a part of midbrain, and descend as same as the lateral corticospinal tract. And it terminates in the interneurons only up to 3 cervical segments of the cord, spinal cord. So only up to upper 3 cervical segments of the cord. And its functions is mainly facilitatory effect on flexors and inhibitory effect on extensors. Okay. So it controls again the skilled voluntary movements by showing the facilitatory effect on flexors and inhibitory effect on extensors. And lateral vestibulospinal tract. So spinal tract is also divided into lateral and medial. So lateral tract, its origin is from the lateral vestibular nucleus or decutus nucleus, and it is uncrossed in the anterior funiculus of spinal cord. So this tract is uncrossed. Okay, remember this, lateral vestibulospinal is uncrossed. And termination is ventral gray horn neurons through the interneurons to alpha and gamma motor neurons of lamina 9. That is in the spinal cord we have 10 lamina, no? So there in the termination takes place to alpha and gamma motor neurons. And this function is it receives from the vestibular apparatus article, vestibular apparatus article, and facilitate the extensors and inhibit the flexors and maintain the balance, linear acceleration. Okay, so these functions are opposite to previous rubrospinal. Here it is facilitating the extensors and inhibiting the flexors. And then medial vestibulospinal tract. So this is also originating from medial vestibular nucleus. Okay, and the previous we have seen it is originating from lateral vestibular nucleus. and this tract is also uncrossed in the anterior funiculus, and it terminates on the anterior motor neurons or interneurons of cervical segment. And the functions are afferents from semicircular canal of vestibular apparatus to the medial longitudinal fasciculus, control the movement of head, neck, eyes in response to visual and auditory stimuli. Okay, so these functions are: one is vestibular apparatus, the afferents from semicircular canals are received, and the fibers pass through medial longitudinal fasciculus to control the movements of head, neck and eyes in response to visual and auditory stimuli. Okay, so it is having two functions. One is involved in vestibular apparatus, that is maintaining the balance, and also movements of head, neck and eyes in response to visual and auditory stimuli. And that is lateral and medial vestibulospinal. Now we will see the reticulospinal. In this medial reticulospinal, so this is also called pontine reticular formation or pontine reticulospinal tract. So it originates from the pons area, pons reticular formation, and it descends uncrossed in the anterior funiculus. So this is also uncrossed fiber, uncrossed tract, and it terminates in the laminae 7-8 of spinal cord through interneurons to the alpha and gamma motor neurons of 9th layer. Okay, so same as the previous, it terminates in the 7th and 8th, and also alpha and gamma motor neurons of 9th layer. And then the lateral reticulospinal tract, it originates in the lateral reticulospinal tract, it originates in the medullary reticular formation, and it is also uncrossed in the lateral funiculus, and it terminates in the internuncial neurons or interneurons of laminae 7, 8 and 9, and its function is to control the movements and muscle tone. It facilitates the pontine reticulospinal tract facilitates, and medullary tract inhibits the voluntary and reflex movements and muscle tone. Okay, so remember this point: pontine reticulospinal tract facilitates, and whereas medullary or lateral reticulospinal tract inhibits the voluntary and reflex movements and muscle tone. Okay, so this is very important concept you should remember for understanding the coming topics. And the next tract is tectospinal. It originates in the superior colliculus, and it crosses midline in the lower part of tegmentum and descend down in the anterior wide funiculus. Okay, so it crosses in the lower part of tegmentum, that is the part of midbrain, and descend in the anterior wide funiculus. Termination, it terminates in the upper cervical segment in the layers 5th and 7th. And its functions is turning head and moving arm in response to visual, hearing and other exteroceptive stimuli. Okay, for turning head and moving arm in response to visual, hearing and other exteroceptive stimuli. And olivospinal tract, its origin is inferior olivary nucleus, and it descends ipsilaterally on the anterior horn cells, and on the anterior horn cells of the spinal cord, and its function is movements arising from proprioceptors. So movements in according to the signals arising from the proprioceptors, that is the receptors of the joints. And then the medial longitudinal fasciculus. So these fibers origin from various nuclei like vestibular, reticular formation, superior colliculus, interstitial nucleus of Kajal, and it is the course is closely related to 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7th and 12th cranial nerves along with medial vestibulospinal tract. So the course of these fibers are related to 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7th and 12th cranial nerves along with medial vestibulospinal tract. The termination is on ventral horn cells that innervate the neck muscles. and their function is simultaneous movements of eye and neck to vestibular and auditory stimuli. Okay, so simultaneous movements of eye and neck to vestibular and auditory stimuli. So this is very important. Medial longitudinal fasciculus. And the other descending tracts ending in the brain stem. Okay, so the tracts which are not going down till the spinal cord but ending only in the brain stem. So these tracts are corticonuclear tracts, that is arising from cortex and ending in various nuclei in the brain stem, and corticopontocerebellar tracts. So here the fiber starting from cortex, pons, and then ending in cerebellum, and then cortico-rubral, cortico-olivary, cortico-reticular. So these all again form the part of extrapyramidal system. So these are also having various influences on the because these are ending in the brainstem, these will influence the lower motor neurons, that is the tracts which arise from the brainstem to the spinal cord. And the clinical application for this extrapyramidal is, or this will be coming to any fiber. Lower motor neuron means any tract, descending tract ending on the anterior horn cells, and the fibers arising from anterior horn cells supplying the skeletal muscles. So that those are the lower motor neurons. So these the lower motor neuron paralysis occur in diseases that cause destruction of anterior horn cells or their axons in the dorsal root or peripheral nerves. So examples for this lower motor neuron paralysis are any motor neuron disease, that is lesion or damaging the motor neuron, alpha motor neurons, and the most common example is post poliomyelitis, motor neuron disease, and lesion of motor nerve roots. And if we see the differences between upper motor neuron and lower motor neuron paralysis, so there are 9 points here. So first, the muscles affected are in groups in upper motor neuron, and lower motor neuron individual muscles are affected because the fibers motor neuron supplies single muscle fiber. So that will be individual muscle will be affected. Muscle groups means the flexors or extensors like that, and here group means only one, that is biceps or triceps like that. And the size of muscle, in UMN there is no atrophy, and in lower motor neuron atrophy is a pronounced feature, that is the muscle degradation will be present. And type of paralysis is spastic, that is hypertonia, tone will be increased, the muscle will be in excited state. And the flaccid paralysis is seen in lower motor, or otherwise called hypotonia. So very flaccid, loose, the muscle will not have any tone, and it will be loose structure, like hanging structure like thing. And tendon reflexes are exaggerated in upper motor neuron, and lower motor neuron diminished or absent. And superficial reflexes are absent in upper motor neuron and also lower motor. In both the paralysis, superficial reflexes are lost. And Babinski sign is positive in upper motor neuron, that is extensor plantar response. And whereas lower motor neuron, it is negative, that is the normal response, that is flexor plantar flexion is seen. Involuntary movements are absent in upper motor and present in the form of fascicular twitches in lower motor neuron lesion. And electromyograph changes that shows no denervation potential in upper motor, and denervation potential is seen in lower motor neuron paralysis. And nerve conduction studies, no abnormalities are seen in upper motor neuron paralysis, and in lower motor neuron nerve conduction will be decreased. So this is a slide showing the detailed description of upper motor and lower motor neuron differences. So pause this slide and then read out the differences between the two and write in your notebook. So this is a picture taken from Hindu Purana textbook. So detailed description of each and every point is given. Okay, so these differences are very, very important. This will come as a short question or very short, and also a part of essay question. Okay, so read these differences and write down in a notebook. So for today's class, the assignment will be this: write down the differences of upper motor and lower motor neuron differences, and also just write down the names and functions of various extrapyramidal tracts. So that's all for today's class. Thank you all.